Hello and welcome everybody to the Institute of Politics YouTube channel. My name is James Talberg and I'm excited to welcome you to our new Sunday format when myself and my teammates are going to discuss the latest political updates that are basically touching our day-to-day life and everybody's agenda and how it influences their economy, social life, etc., etc., etc. So I want to welcome Ruslan Bortnik and Marina Cherenkova to today's meeting.
My pleasure, colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, I want to talk today about US aid. We're a little bit behind the schedule because we're not at the peak of the news anymore. But just to break it down again on this channel and between us, why is it interesting? Why is it important? Because it's a scandalous situation where Trump's administration is closing US aid. And I just want to break it down, the history of the US aid, what was the idea behind the US aid, the transformation, if it was transformed during the time that it was created to our time, and how we've got to the point that somebody decided to close it and to shut it down. So if we can start by just giving a brief information, what is USAID, what USAID was created for, what goals did they had, and if they have transformed during the time that USAID was active, and how did we get to the situation when USAID is considered toxic? Marina, if you can dive into that from the beginning to nowadays situation.
Right. Thank you so much. So the USAID as an institution which should have promote American way of thinking and should be a barrier between West way of thinking and communist way of thinking. It was created in 1961 by Kennedy, President of the United States. The primary goal was soft power creation and influence. But at the same time, I do believe that deeply inside, at that time, American elite inherited that's Weber's philosophy that even charity, even helping other people should be done exactly in the very efficient and capitalist way. That's why if you look even at the earliest projects of USAID, you would see several layers. The practical layer, such as, let's say, refurbishment of school or roads or fighting with some diseases. That's absolutely good thing. Underneath, it's going to be soft power influence in those countries where regimes or governments were not extremely loyal to the United States of America. It is not a unique situation. Each empire did that in the past, and the United States of America just pick up the best practices and implement it. However, more money, more expertise, more successful projects, successful from the American point of view, but not very successful from other sides. They were such a flagship project that they were picked up by Intel community. And I'm talking about top Intel community. From my perspective, the main problem is when Intel community and USAID merged together and they already decided what to do, not even informing elected representatives of American people. That's what, from my perspective, would be the main issues at this time. And by the way, maybe internationally, James, it is not number one news anymore. Internally, it is still, because a lot of different small facts, which are sometimes really shocking facts, are still discussed in the communities.
Are there regular Americans educated about the situation with USAID? Because USAID has a big budget. I think in 2024, it was over $60 billion. And I'm assuming all that money is coming from taxpayers' money.
Exactly.
Do Americans aware of USAID and their practices and their agenda and goals and what projects USAID is spending their money on?
Oh, James, what a lovely question. Thank you so much. Unfortunately not. That is the main problem, because initially everyone in the USA, I mean, people were absolutely sure that USA is about charity, USA is about values, and USA is about demonstrating how good and exceptional Americans are. Do you remember we discussed that American exceptionalism? They were absolutely, by the way, American people, they are extremely happy to donate, to help, and to support other nations. And that's the part of their national character. Unfortunately, I do believe that maybe one problem now that people had no slightest idea and have no slightest idea still. What was that about? However, I have to just that my comments. USAID as an institution is not closed. It's in the process of restructuring.
It's frozen.
No, it's in the process of restructuring. That means that the huge staff which USAID as an institution used to have are going to be merged with the State Department. And with the new strategy and with the new priorities of the new administration, it's going to be restarted. And I'm absolutely sure about that. I'm just absolutely sure about that, because instead of Soviet Union in 1961, now is going to be China. And soft power would be very much needed. However, I think that more interesting things we should discuss today, and especially I do hope that American people would watch us with interest, because I do believe that American people should understand what foreign institutions could do on behalf of American people. And that's not always a very good stuff. It's not always a very useful stuff. And I just believe in transparency. Let me be simple.
Marina, but nobody cared about what you said did abroad. As I understood, that problem for USAID started from the problems of non-transparency for elected Republicans in Senate, and from the ties, so-called ties of USAID financing of so-called Rios in Charlottesville, as I remember. And so
yes,
the
exactly.
problem for USAID started from internal policy in the United States, not from that they have done in the abroad for such a huge money.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I totally support you. However, more people understand about what was done internally. Now they are able to judge how their country is represented by those community, international community, mixed community abroad. And I believe that is something which really upsets American people at this stage. But yes, to your point, that's a very American feature, not to pay attention to the rest of the world, because it's a huge country between two oceans. They have 350 plus million people. They have a lot of their issues to discuss, their problems to solve. Of course, they're not going to be, precise in analyzing what was done out of their taxes somewhere in Ukraine, let's say, Eastern Europe, let's say, or Africa. But why I really respect and love Americans, because their national values are very, very understandable for me. Let me put it like that. They hate corruption, they hate manipulation, and they hate not fair play. And what was done, it was a dirty play with their money. And that is something which normally people, American people, normally cannot forget.
So I just want to go back again to basics. The budget that USA had was probably split into two. One was to fund and invest into internal programs inside the United States. And the second part was to fund programs and agencies abroad. Is that correct?
That's one of the hypotheses. We're still in the process because news
Figuring
are
it out.
coming. Yep. News are coming every day for those who would like to know more details. But yes, some of the programs were financed internally. And one more thing which we didn't discuss, and I would like just to elaborate on your question, why USAID became now a whipping boy or whipping girl. As Ruslan said, when institution becomes so mature that this institution allows itself not to talk to senators, Congress people, or top federal agency, that means that this institution has its own strategy. And having its own strategy, not sharing that strategy with the rest of the government, with the rest of the American people, is quite dangerous for the statecraft, as Americans say. I think that we Americans are quite lucky that everything now is more or less on the surface. It's a lot of stuff for analysis, a lot of stuff to process in order not to repeat the same mistakes. Because if inside of your country you have such a powerful institution which consists of the merged several institutions, it is a danger for country as a country, for the state as a structure.
Marina, would we know what was their strategy? Do we have that information?
Definitely not me. And I doubt that we would ever know that because, as I said earlier, it was extremely close with the intel community. And I do not believe that it's going to be public. I just don't.
So I just want to summarize it. Sorry, I'm cutting you off. They had a good amount of budget. They had a good amount of money. Local people, the average Americans had no idea exactly what they were doing. They thought that's charity. Yep. And people that were elected into the government could not receive a report from that agency what is going on. So that's just odd. Can you legally somehow do anything about it? I mean, like, they have to be held accountable by the government.
Is it deep state part?
Yep, it is. Yes, Ruslan. It is a part of the deep state, a big part, very sufficient and effective part of big state. That's why when we discuss previously why American people had no slightest idea about some colored revolution or some coups or some change in government, why on earth that scandalistic Bangladesh story with Prime Minister and at that time Hillary Clinton as State Secretary was accepted by the rest of the Americans as something very good, because they were not even thinking about something dirty doing abroad. Never. It was not the part of their way of thinking. It was not the part of their culture. If we're talking about average American, right?
So, as you've mentioned, it's probably going to be a secret and we wouldn't be able to figure out what was their agenda and strategy, and it's not going to be published. But I think we can just approach that situation from a different perspective. And because they used to work from 1961, I'm assuming their goals have changed when the Soviet Union collapsed. But we can go now to nowadays Ukraine.
Yep.
I think over 6 billion of their general budget in 2024 was funded, and they have invested in Ukraine. I think 4 billion went directly to the government, and about 2 billion was spread around the Ukrainian agencies. Ruslan, from what year USAID have entered Ukraine and started funding directly the government and different agencies and programs in Ukraine? I'm trying to figure it out because we can just factualize here from that perspective. We don't know what what's their strategy. But if we take that sum of like 5-10 years, what they have been investing, to what companies and agencies and programs they have been investing their money in Ukraine, we can kind of understand from that perspective what was their goal, because they have definitely achieved certain goals and successfully managed certain agencies and programs.
For me, it looks like Ukraine was a small United States in this case, because United States started to work in Ukraine from officially 94, far away. From this moment, it started to work with from humanitarian needs, from many humanitarian needs. But during from that time, USAID achieved a more and more political goals. And the role of USAID, for example, in Ukrainian revolutions in 2004 and 2014, I think could be also significant in this moment. USAID in the end, for example, for 2024, USAID.
Ruslan, before we go to 2024, for people that are watching us, because that's going to probably going to be an average American, in 2004, that was the first revolution in Ukraine.
Yeah,
that pro-Western
orange, so-called Orange Revolution, or Maidan.
And
Maidan,
by the end of that revolution, a pro-Western party came into power in Ukraine.
But for the next 4 years, then the Ukrainian government was changed in the end of the presidential term of President of Ukraine, Yushchenko, and we had one small pivot to the east, Yanukovych and his team trying to find a balance between east and west. Marina, am I right?
Yes, you're right. I just hate to say that and to interrupt, but would you please remind me, Ruslan, Yushchenko as the president of Ukraine, he married an American woman who worked where?
An American citizen.
An American citizen, yeah. Where did she work?
You said?
Yeah.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh God, yes.
Well, so basic questions.
Oh God, yes.
No conspiracy theories. Basic questions.
No,
so,
it's only facts.
I'm referring to my question. I'm referring to my question.
And they met in very surprised way in the airplane. And there is very popular thought in Ukraine that it was a very prepared meeting between them.
Of course it was prepared, for God's sake. We are grown-up people. Yes, but look, that is something we should not judge, which is fix it as a fact, period. I personally think, I don't know how much money was spent by USAID on Ukraine in 2004 for Orange Revolution, but I do know it's public information from Michael Benz, who used to be, now he gives interview to the most popular American bloggers and podcasters. He claims that it was more than $5 billion for 2014, where Victoria Nuland spent as much as up to $5 billion. And that means not just financing the group of people, protesters, it was supporting media community, separate journalists, separate politicians,
scientists, everything.
Yes.
Leader of public society. From my opinion, starting from 2002, USAID started to finance in Ukrainian mass media, Ukrainian humanitarian, scientific sectors, and so on. So USAID started to work on so-called soft power in Ukraine.
Yep.
It happened after the two scandals during the Kuchma's time, one of Ukrainian presidents. It was a scandal with Kolchuga selling to Iraq, selling of Ukrainian weapon to Iraq in the time when the United States was preparing for the intervention to this country. And it was a second scandal about the killing of Ukrainian journalist Gongadze.
I think I understand what's happening. Just for people that are watching us, I want to elaborate a little bit. In 2002, Kuchma was the president of Ukraine. He was a neutral president. He wasn't pro-East. He wasn't pro-West. He was trying to maintain a neutral state for Ukraine. During that time, United States or the Western allies, they were prepping to start a war. Was that in Iraq? Excuse my stupid question. Was that Iraq the country that they were planning to start the war?
There was claims that Ukraine is weaponized in Iraq before the United States intervention.
That's what I'm saying. So United States were planning their war in Iraq, and before they have started the war, those agencies that were funded by U.S. aid started a journalistic scandal that Ukraine is selling weapons to the country that United States is planning to go to war with. And that's I'm just assuming now that at that time, that was probably planned to reduce his political popularity and political points. Is that the case?
I don't condemn United States for it, because every power.
But it's not United States; it's the USA.
May and has to do in the same way. But starting from 2002, this role of USAID grew up very significantly in Ukraine. And in the end, for 2024, we have $2 billion United States dollars per year only for mass media, for different NGOs, for different politicians, and so on. It became a tool of management of country. And I'm not against it again, but sometimes or very often, USAID choose for their partners very radical, ultra radical people, ultra radical political movements, and the role of USAID, political role of USAID during the last 5 years, maybe even 10 years, was more and more destructive for our country. If you are talking about political side, if you are talking about restoration of the energy sector, if you are talking
humanitarian
about
projects,
schools, it's quite different. We were very grateful, USAID, for this work. But when we are talking about the political ties and connections, there was no any conservative policy. There was no any democracy policy, to be honest, to say. There was only a policy of management. Yeah.
I totally agree with every word Ruslan just said. Totally agree with that.
So what I understand from here, first of all, I want to separate the humanitarian projects and trends that USAID was managing, controlling, and investing money into. And we can all agree that that's a good thing to help people in need, to help countries in need, to help certain agencies that organize and coordinate those projects. Then I think we need to separate United States from the USAID, since, they weren't held accountable by the United States themselves, right? Because we've mentioned at the beginning that a senator that would like to get a report what USAID is doing abroad, what funds they're spending and on what programs, they wouldn't be able to get that report. So I think we're specifically focusing on a trend that aside United States, aside the humanitarian projects that USAID had, they also had a certain political, if we can say so, political agenda in different countries, and specifically in Ukraine, USAID, specifically in the political department, they were trying to help push, invest, and support certain political parties that were destructive for the Ukrainian democracy. Is that the case?
Yeah.
I think it is the case, except I totally disagree with you that we can separate USAID from the United States. It's just impossible to do.
I'll rephrase. I'm not separating. I mean, I'm not. I just don't want to blame Americans for spending their tax money.
American people, no. American people, no. Those who were empowered, those who worked in those structures with their own agenda, probably they should.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I mean.
Explain.
What's happening?
At least explain.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like really for all of us and for those who are hopefully will watch and listen to us, I would like to propose, some project which would explain how taxpayers' money are spent by, let's say, foreign policy communities abroad. Because I believe that American people must know that, they deserve to know that, and it's up to their priorities to identify what, how, and when their money should be spent. So maybe next time we could discuss that more precisely. What do you think, James?
That's a good idea. I think in increasing the transparency in agencies that carry budgets of $1 billion, it's an important thing, right? It should be on the edge of a public information, or at the very least, they need to be held accountable by the government, right? People, the senators, people that work in the government, they should be able to get a report what's that money spent on, because they need to control it, right? Like just in Ukraine, we can say that some of that money was spent specifically to help and support specific political groups that I would assume, that's just an assumption at this point, have led Ukraine not to the most successful state or position that it is at this moment, right? So 100% we should break down somehow the situation. How can we increase or offer different approaches to increase that transparency with these agencies that carry heavy budgets?
For the rest of the world, it is very important. What I'm trying to say, that it depends on those Americans who live here, how aggressive or not aggressive the foreign policy is going to be towards other countries. And I believe that American people should understand whether they want that policy to be implemented abroad or not, because there are some very, very dirty and dark things which were done on behalf of American people. And we have just, maybe we just do another video explaining, let's say, flagship projects of USAID in Asia, in Africa.
Take specific projects, yeah.
Yeah. Because now what we're doing, we're talking overall, in general, but some specific projects are terrifying. They're too dark. They are. I mean, as a taxpayer, I'm a taxpayer.
Yep.
And I definitely don't want to be
funding those projects.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Moreover, this absence of control over abroad, you say, doings, I think, led this agency to this interruption in internal United States policy, because they sorry colleagues for these words, but maybe they achieved a very special experience abroad, irresponsible experience, and then they use this experience inside of United States during political process, and that stand a problem for American society also.
Yeah. I mean, at least 15 projects which now are in discussed very heavily by American bloggers. They were done according to the methodology, or as they say, playbook of USAID. And that playbook was developed,
in foreign countries,
designed in foreign countries. Yeah. So, and before that period of time, American people were very much protected from that, let's say, not dirty influence, manipulation. But recently, somehow USAID as institution decided to try all those tools on its own people. And that is frightening, gentlemen. It is frightening.
Yeah.
Ruslan, would you add anything else in terms of Ukraine and USAID? Is there anything that we have missed that it's important to discuss when it comes to a $6 billion budget that was funded into Ukraine?
Like Ukrainians, I would like to say thank you, American people, for this very supportive behavior and for this very, very important aid for Ukraine. If you are talking about energy sectors, about hospitals and schools and so on. through the USAID and different other organizations. But at the same time, I think I would like to save USAID. I would like to reboard, restart, and to say the USAID is a very important part for cooperation between our countries. And we need this help after the ending of the war or during the war. But I think we need to revise the policy of this organization very significantly, especially when we are talking about the working with mass media, political actors, NGOs, and so on and so on. We need more balanced policy, taking into account different democracy thoughts, different democracy positions, not only liberal but also conservative. We need to revise the partners of USAID in Ukraine, but it was because it was very special part of Ukrainian political community, very narrow part, a lot of maybe also a corruptional problem as questions we could stand connecting with this. And we need to rethink in general the rules and the circumstance of working of this organization in Ukraine.
I totally support that.
I think that was good enough for the first one. We've got a basic understanding what is USAID, how they specifically function on the example of Ukraine in a different foreign country. And I agree that we should break down specific projects in specific countries so people understand how their money is being spent, so they'll be educated and maybe they'll have an opinion, and that opinion can influence politicians.
Next time, colleagues, I will bring to our table the very specific projects in Ukraine. You will be very frightened and you will be very funny in this moment. Believe me.
And I will bring some projects from Asia and some of Northern African countries. Let me put like that. Some of the most bright and successful.
Okay, agreed. So next time we're going to break down specific projects. Colleagues, thank you so much for that conversation. That was insightful.
Thank you. Thank you.